All right, hello again. So let's jump into, see if I can get my computer all set up with my notes. Let's talk a little bit about chapter three, which is preparing, organizing, creating, crafting your first speech. So it will rarely be I'm going to start at the beginning. Here we go. Let's follow this in one direction kind of process. You're going to be grabbing information, doing research, determining source credibility, all of that important stuff. And it's not always going to happen from start to finish in that order. So it's okay if it's a little bit messy at times. It's okay if it doesn't make sense at times. Your goal at the end is to have this cohesive product. And I do have drop boxes already set up for you that are for rough drafts. So if you have a rough draft of your outline and you hit a wall, submit that to me, shoot me an email, say, hey, I would love if you could look at this for me real quick. As long as it's not, an hour before your speech is supposed to be due. I'm happy to take a look for you, at that, and see what's going on, how we could improve it together, how we can navigate this process together. But one of the great things about your textbook, and then I'll show you the chapter 3 worksheet as well, which can be really helpful, is that it gives you a step-by-step process. So as rare as this like perfect linear process is going to be, this model can be very useful. So step 1, topic. Chapter 6 goes into much more detail about selecting and honing your topic, and I will pop over to that worksheet in a moment as well and show you what I meant by some of the next things. But essentially, I mentioned in your introduction syllabus video, you're not wanting to present on something that only you care about. You need to find a way to connect it to your audience as well. I've had really powerful, wonderful examples of this. I've also had some that fell a little bit flat. One of the best speeches I've ever had was a class where one of my engineering students gave a ceremonial celebration speech honoring the sidewalk, which seems silly because, like, who's passionate about sidewalks? But he made the inclusion of the audience and their perspectives and their use and their memories tied to times that you would be drawing in chalk on the sidewalk as a kid, or like falling on the sidewalk, learning how to ride a bike, or whatever. This is many years ago, so off the top of my head, those examples are not 100% there. But he made a way to have the audience be connected to that topic. Meanwhile, I had a student do speeches on cryptocurrency, which he was fascinated by, but a lot of the students other in the audience like didn't have any background on it, weren't sure why it mattered to them if they weren't participating in exchanging cryptocurrencies, etc. So really making sure that, one, you are passionate about the topic, because if you're not passionate, they're not going to want to listen anyway. And two, that you're finding a way to engage your audience and make sure that they're going to be excited and interested in the topic as well. Otherwise, they're going to click out of their brain and think like, this is what I'm going to have for lunch, or this is what I'm going to watch on Netflix later, and I'm so excited to be thinking about that, rather than listening to you. And that's, then why are we even talking? Why are we trying? So one of my favorite examples of a question that's really helpful to determine what should my topic be is, what are you really pissed about? It's a really great place to start. I once wrote a 25-page conference paper on the parking situation on my campus in Sacramento because it was so atrocious, and I had been in so many terrible situations because of it, and that anger fueled my interest in continuing to do research and find out why people get so mad when you cut them off, or when you steal their parking spot, or whatever else. It's actually, I still love that paper. It never got published or anything, but It was very interesting to me. So, what's making you really mad right now? There's a lot in this world to be mad at. Those are probably good topics to start at. Step 2, gathering supporting material. You've got your topic. Now we want to know why you know what you know. How do you know what you know? Why can I trust you on that? Why are you an expert? So figuring out how to use things like facts or statistics or personal testimonies, or when it's okay to use things like anecdotes. What you're trying to avoid here with the gathering of supporting material is not just getting up and giving us your opinion. Your opinion is valid, but if you can show us that that is the truth and that that is a real perspective with facts and statistics and expert testimony, etc., it turns from your opinion to a claim that you can support. And that's what we want to focus on. The opinion doesn't totally have a place here in this course. Step 3, organize the body of your speech. So you're going to have to first start with your thesis statement. That's your central idea. It should be one single sentence. Every semester, I will get students to confuse their thesis and their preview. So your thesis statement should be one single sentence. Elephants should not be kept in zoos, period. That is the whole point. That's the central idea of my speech. That would be a persuasive speech. My 3 main points, or my preview, which is going to talk more about that, would be something like elephants should not be kept in zoos because they are unkind to the animals, they do not meet the animals' biological needs, and animals should not be kept in confined spaces for human entertainment. Then in my speech, I'm going to go over those 3 points, and I'm going to give you facts and statistics and expert testimony and all of that good stuff to support those claims that I'm making so that it's not just my opinion, right? The textbook, I think it's chapter 9 and chapter 13 that talk about different organizational patterns. What organizational pattern you pick will change your thesis statement. So if you're going to, and kind of the whole central idea of your speech, if you're going to do it in, let's say, like a chronological organizational pattern, chronological being time, things in the order that they happened. If I'm going to organize that persuasive speech with a chronological order and talk about maybe the first instances of animal abuse in zoos, and then I'm going to talk about current policies that people are trying to enact that would prevent animals from being harmed or elephants from being harmed in zoos. And then I can talk about the future, what that would look like, how we could reimagine the traditional zoo to better support both humans and the animals involved. That would be a chronological pattern, but I can also do it in excuse me, a refutive pattern, which would be, you might think that zoos are wonderful to the animals, but actually, and now I'm going to show you evidence about how that's wrong, or it might be common knowledge, or you may think that this is correct, but actually this is correct. And that's going to change the whole direction of my speech as well. So you have to pick the best organizational pattern for the speech that you're giving. It's not always going to be like chronological is the way to go, or causal is the way to go, or sequential. So sequential being like, it has to happen in this order, but I'm not necessarily giving you like time, date stamps, or refutive, or all of the different organizational patterns have their place, but some of them lend themselves more effectively to different types of speeches. So you want to make sure that you're picking the best fit of organizational pattern for your speech and your topic. Step 4, now you're going to do you've got your topic, you've got all this great background information, you know how you want to organize it, you've got your main points, you've got your thesis statement. Now you want to do your introduction, your transitions, and your conclusion. think transitions are one of the biggest places that students fall flat. They forget to kind of take those connecting pieces between the speeches, between the main points. And the introduction also is usually very short. And the introduction should be enough information that I, as a person who maybe doesn't know anything about the topic that you're telling me about, have enough background information that I can get on board with whatever your main points are going to be. So maybe you've never been to a zoo, and I need to tell you a little bit more about how many zoos exist, or the history of zoos, or what their original goals were, etc. So anything that I need to know to understand your speech, any kind of like lingo associated with your topic, that all needs to be in the introduction. Your introduction also needs to have an attention getter. That should be the actual literal first thing out of your mouth. I don't ever want like, hi, my name's Kirsten, and I'm gonna talk to you about elephants. That's not the first thing. The first thing out of your mouth should be a startling statistic or telling a story. It's a narrative. You do have a required narrative for one of your speeches. So tell me a story. Use an analogy, use a quotation. Quotations are super popular for both introductions and conclusions. I would urge you to stray away from rhetorical questions. They typically are cliche and like, how many of you have ever heard about zoos? Not as effective, right? Meanwhile, if I tell you this like really significant narrative about a very sad elephant that was trapped in a zoo and not treated well, that may grab your attention more. You can also use humor, jokes, that kind of thing. There's a whole list in chapter 3 of, I think my notes say it's on page 184. I don't remember if that's the 11th edition or the 10th edition, but somewhere in there, there is a list of all of the different types of attention getters. So you want to make sure that's the first thing out of your mouth. Transitions, signposting, things like, first, I'm going to talk to you about the biology of elephants. Second, I'm going to talk to you about their migrational patterns. Third, I'm going to talk to you about their family connections. Whatever your main points are. Signposting can be a really great way to transition. Things like previews, things like summaries. So I just told you about the biology of elephants. Now we're going to transition a little bit, and I'm going to tell you about their geographical moving patterns, etc. Transitions, super important. And then conclusions. You need to have a sense of closure. That's probably my biggest pet peeve in speeches is, well, that's my speech. You should always end leaving your audience with a sense of closure. Thank you should be the last words out of your mouth. If the last words out of your mouth are not thank you, bad things will happen. Always say thank you at the very end. It will at least help with the sense of closure. Step 5, you need a formal outline. There is a difference between a formal outline and a speaking outline. So your formal outline is going to be the template that I give you with your references page. You will not type up your intro or your conclusion. You should have all of your main supporting points, any of your citations that you're going to need to say orally, like according to National Geographic, etc. Any transitions, any introductions, I need to pause here because I know I'm not taking a second to let people think about the quote that I just gave them, or I've been saying lots of vocal fillers at this point. All of that information is in your speaking outline. So my outline should not have an introduction, a conclusion, any of your transitions on it. It's just going to be your main points. The real substance of your speech goes to me. That's your formal outline. Your speaking outline needs everything else that you want to say in there. It also is not going to be a manuscript. So manuscript would be written out like an essay format, lines and lines and lines of text. This is going to be bulleted with Roman numerals. Step 6, practice. Practice. Practice in front of people. Practice in front of your pet. Practice in front of your plant. Practice in front of your mirror. Practice. This may be you recording it a couple times and being like, oh, that one was not my best work. Let's try that again. Practice. You are mostly going to be doing extemporaneous speeches. So that being, you have an outline, you are prepared somewhat, but you are not reading from a manuscript. If you read your speech to me, you will get a 0. I can read. I don't need you to read it to me. I want you to just have a conversation with me, which is exactly what I'm doing with you, right? Same kind of format, same kind of feeling. 7, present your speech, which is going to happen a little bit differently. You're going to have to do it online, recorded format, with the exception of your one live speech. But you want to make sure that however you are presenting the speech, you are as prepared as possible. If that means making sure that you have water next to you for if your mouth gets dry, or putting a little sign on the door for your roommates or family that says, "Shh, speech being recorded in process," or putting your cat in the bathroom, which I very strongly considered because she has been running around like crazy, which I'm sure y'all have heard her. But whatever that means, being prepared for you, making sure that you feel prepared and ready to present your speech as the final step. And then I always like to say there's an 8th step, which is feedback. You're going to get a bunch of feedback from me. You're going to get feedback from your peers. And that's a super important element of this, because you may have missed something that was really important that we needed, or you may have done something really, really well, and we want to congratulate you and let you know that that was a really well organized speech, etc. So I always like to say feedback is the final step. But let's click into this super helpful, I wonder, share screen. Okay, that's Zoom. Cool. So this is a worksheet that I made based on those steps that I just went over with you. Steps 1 through 5, ta-da, or 8, I guess. So it goes in order. Topic. Here's some interesting background facts, testimony, examples, narratives, all that type of supporting material that we're going to go over even more in depth on how to assess credibility in chapter 7. The source, why the source is relevant, representative, recent, and reliable. Those are questions you should always be asking. Things can change based on dates. If it is something from the 1960s, is it going to be exactly the same factual information? Maybe. Gravity hasn't changed much since the 1960s, but something more like social issues will have. So thinking about, is it relevant? How does it actually relate back to my topic? Is it reliable? Is this something where it's being repeated in multiple sources so that I know that it's accurate? Do they cite their own sources? That kind of thing. So this is a good place to put some background information for you, things that maybe you want to pull for the introduction. Then I've got an area where you can write your speech thesis and your preview in that format, in that order. Those are things that need to be stated in your introduction. You should always give your speech thesis and your preview in your introduction with all that really good background information. Then you've got your main points. There's no way in the world that I'm going to be able to tell how many main points you have, how many subpoints you have. So these are just examples. You can delete as you so choose. 3 main points is a happy medium. 4, okay. 7, probably too many. 2, probably not enough. Find what works for you, but stay around that happy medium. What organizational pattern did you pick? Now that you picked it, why did you pick it? Let's talk introduction, transition, conclusions. Here's all of the different kinds of attention getters. Remember, that needs to be the first thing out of your mouth. So I'm gonna use startling statistics, and I'm just gonna write startling statistics here. Then in attention getter, I'm gonna write out actually what my startling statistic was. How are you gonna gain the goodwill of the audience? That needs to be in the introduction. Why is the audience listening? If you don't tell them in the introduction, they're gonna stop listening. What's your purpose? What's your goal? There's all the great background information. There's your speech preview. So you've got basically a little template already for how to write your introduction. Then I've got an area for your conclusion. So you need to prepare the audience for the end of the speech. You know, make any final appeals. You always have to give us a summary. There should always be a summary of your main points in your conclusion. and then give me a closing statement. That's where things like your quotes are going to be really helpful. Then finally, in my outline, my formal outline, you won't need this in your speaking outline, you need a references page. We have now switched to APA 7th edition. I have a link for the Purdue OWL in your references, helpful resources, I think is the name of the tab, so that you can look up APA format if that's not something that is already in your wheelhouse. If you have questions on APA, please reach out to me. References pages should not just be the URL. It should be in a format with the author and title, date, all that good stuff. If any of the information is missing, there's also a link in the helpful resources tab for what you would put instead of a piece of missing information. But for the first little bit, I'm gonna have you give me the source in APA format, then explain to me how you located the source, and don't just write, I Googled it. I'm gonna need you to write like, these were some of my search terms, and then why is it trusted? Keep asking why. Why can I believe this person? Who was the author? Where did we get the funding for this piece, et cetera, and we'll go way more into detail in chapter 7 on how to assess those credibilities, but keep asking why. So that can be super helpful when starting your first speech. This is more towards your informative speech, not really counting your elevator pitch as a significant speech because you are delivering it primarily impromptu and just really talking about yourself. You don't have to like research yourself. So this would be a good worksheet to start off with your informative speech. And then super quick, I'm not gonna make it a separate video because it would just be like 2 minutes. I wanna look at the chapter 6 worksheet. So after you've read chapter 6, you'll see some of these questions can be really great guiding you while you're reading, like why is it important to select a topic that involves you? Maybe brainstorming some ideas. So what do I care about the most? Is there someone or something that I can advocate for? What makes me really angry or happy? That was one of the questions I talked about earlier. What activities do you enjoy? Are there problems? Are there campus concerns that you could talk about? And then I think it's in the 10th edition, chapter or page 111 or 111 talks about mind mapping, and mind mapping can be super helpful for you to explore different themes, especially if you're going to try to use that one overarching topic. What are separate themes that we can discuss related to elephants or related to the Black Lives Matter movement or related to reproductive justice or related to whatever you're interested in speaking about. If that is not something that is helpful for you to create that mind map, abandon it. Find something that is helpful for you. If you want a little bit more guidance on how to do a mind map, normally in class I would like lead you guys through a mind mapping activity, but it's a little bit more difficult when all the answers are coming out of my brain. It's a little more helpful when I can be like, yeah, somebody's interested in the subject of adopting animals, so let's like mind map it out together. But if that's something that would be helpful for y'all, just shoot me an email and let me know, hey, I would like for you to try to find a way to do that on Zoom for us, and I can figure out, maybe I can position the camera out like toward my whiteboard or something. I don't know. Anyway, so we went over the different steps in organizing and creating your first speech. We also went over some of the questions you can ask yourself to determine what a awesome and interesting topic for both you and your audience might be. If you are having trouble and you want to workshop some ideas, let me know. I'm happy to do that with you. I'm also going to give you the opportunity to do that with some of your group members. And if you want to start off by including something that maybe you're interested in talking about in your introduction elevator pitch, works for me too. You can always add in more information. So let me know if you have questions. This is going to be the last video that you would need to watch this week. And I will start posting videos for next week shortly. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.